Hello and welcome to Venus Consciousness. And we're here with me live. And if you're not here right now, you are going to be watching this in the future. And I just want to say welcome to Kavi, I believe is how you say your name. Welcome. And whoever else is here, it shows two viewers, but I think if you start out having joined, I don't get to see you. So, anyway, I just want to take a moment to say thank you for being here with me. And I hope you are having a wonderful day today or evening, if as the case may be, from wherever you're watching this. I'm sending you love and lots of Venus love for whoever needs a little extra, because I know from experience that we always need a little extra. And it's always a oh, yay. When I get love back, I know that you can hear me and see me, which is always a good thing. Um, so I guess what I will start with is a just overall, check in with people and for myself, just talk about a little bit how it is to be a human right now in this crazy time with what I feel like is economic strain because of the leaders in charge, making sure that they are making their pockets and the pockets of all of their friends just bigger and more filled. Whereas, it's that classic conundrum of we, the people, actually suffering while the select few are making out like bandits, sort of on the backs of humanity, basically. And in my last live, I spoke a lot about how it is more than even just the human leaders that Nabanita, I think that's how you say your name. Welcome. But I was just talking about how, the powers that be that I like to call, I have different nicknames for them, baby boy billionaires, but also just the world leaders at large because we live in a system. And welcome Wayne as well and Jason. Okay, you must be the one, and Robert. Welcome everyone. But I think that yeah, getting back to what I was talking about last week and what I wrote my most recent article about is this system that we live on, and part of this checking in with you all and welcoming you all for being here, always giving more love because I love that this computer does that. But basically, this idea that we have a world in which there is a power structure, and that power structure has been set up for thousands of years. And the story that we know because of our limited human perspective is that, the humans that grab the power, that maintain the power, are the ones calling the shots. And that is at the expense of everyone else. And that is also true. I mean, we have leaders that are fighting for just causes and fighting to make it fair, just like I feel like so many of you are, doing your writing and wanting to make a difference in the world just in your own way of showing up as a leader, because being a leader, it's really an inner quality. It's a quality of the soul and it's a quality of the heart. And then through being aligned with your soul and through being a person that bases your actions from your heart, like I like to call it, being a heart warrior, that is how you become a true leader. And I think that I was talking last time as well about how we have been cut off from a culture and a society that used to honor the elders as the leaders and honor wisdom, lived wisdom. And to become an elder that could sit in the circle, you had to demonstrate a certain amount of capacity to see the whole and to look out for the whole. And so leadership qualities in the past were earned, and you had to be able to demonstrate that you could use your own vessel as a lived experience but in service of the community, and that's how you became a leader. Versus you have the power grab of like, because I'm the strongest. And, I like to go back to the Roman times because around the time of the Roman Empire, there are many other empires, and the subjugation of humans has been happening way before the Roman Empire, but for thousands and thousands of years. But it's a good example of how during that time, some of these native cultures um, were oppressed, and then this idea of an eye for an eye. And also around that time we have Christianity, which there are many world religions, but growing up in a Western culture myself, I also lived a year in India, so I learned a lot about the Hinduism, because it was a ashram that I lived in that practiced, there was a guru, but that we also practiced or learned about. I was only 12, but I learned a lot about the Hindi deities, the Hindu deities, and and Buddhism, and all of that. So when I speak about Christianity, I'm really speaking from a person who has grown up with different modalities of ways, and I went to a Waldorf school, which is very spiritually based. So I love to use religion and spirituality as a lens with which to address sort of what's happening to us as human species, I like to call us, because we are a species of humanity. But my point is, during the Roman Empire time, we have this saying, an eye for an eye. And this eye for an eye mentality of the mightiest rules, which is very much an animalistic, like, we have these sayings that really come from nature. Like, I was raising chickens until recently when the coyotes got them. Again, full circle, coyotes. It was funny because this is a side tangent, but we're moving to Spain, and I'd been like, what am I going to do with the chickens? And I had that thought. And then, like, over the course of like a month, we kept having these accidents. Welcome, Shane, where we would forget to close the chickens in at night. And the coyotes were like, I heard that thought. I heard you mention that maybe you don't need your chickens anymore. Don't worry. We'll get them off your hands. And it was sad because they're our pets and we liked them. But my point is, there are a lot of sayings in in the English language and all languages that speak to really truths, just like the one of the eye for an eye with the Romans. But the pecking order idea of, like, chickens literally, and I watched this happen, they will choose, like, we had, because coyotes would often get them and then we'd get new ones in the spring. The newer chickens were like, the younger ones were at the bottom of the pecking order, and the oldest chicken was sort of head hen, who was the top of the pecking order. And so I think that animals have this way, or if you watch nature videos, or those of you who live in nature, especially with like big animals like lions or animals that are predators, there is a certain amount of brutality, we could say, that exists in the animal kingdom. What I think happens to humans when they haven't, and I talk a lot about the brain, when humans are not operating from, I spent a lot of time last week talking about our frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex, and also the pineal gland, which I feel like I need to learn how to say that right. But anyway, and the third eye, and that part of our humanity, which has been known as the seat of the soul, or the seat of what makes us different as humans. When we're not operating from that place, using our full brain or our full faculty, we end up being, like I talk a lot about in the survival brain, which is the hindbrain, which is most similar to the reptilian brain, or in the limbic part of the brain, which is also similar to the animal kingdom and the animals. And those are all fine for Mother Nature being. If you are a lizard, you can act like a lizard. If you are uh, a lion, act like a lion, but we're humans. So we really need to step up. We're upright, like, we're vertical. That's the difference. And I talk a lot about getting back to the Christianity. Like, if you look at esoteric principles, or I should go like this, we are vertical in a horizontal plane, which we could call Earth, or the material plane. And we're this vertical being. And this is where it gets interesting, because we have been subjugated not only by other humans that are more operating from an animalistic place of an eye for an eye, or the mightiest wins, the rule of the mightiest, which is fine. Like I was saying, if that's in the animal kingdom, there's a natural order to it. You have, even though like there was a bill that in Colorado reintroduced wolves, and those that were pro wolves were saying like when you have an ecosystem with wolves, even though farmers don't like the wolves because they're predators, but they actually restored balance in terms of the grasslands, and because they take out a certain amount of the grazers. And when you have too many grazers, like everything gets out of balance. So the animal kingdom has its own innate wisdom, but humans also have an innate wisdom. And when we are operating for thousands of years as a society, as a species that doesn't honor our vertical nature, or better yet, that has been subjugated and oppressed into operating from more of an animalistic way and stuck in the survival brain, which is this. I talk a lot about this, but I feel like I need to keep talking about it because I feel like it's part of like I don't know. I always let open myself up to see what comes, and this is what I end up talking about. So I feel like it's important, but like maybe because as a survivor, I'm 48. I just had my birthday. So I like to think maybe I'll live, if I'm lucky. I have visions of myself as an old lady, a very eccentric old lady. So and I always tell this to my kids because my son is like, Mom, are you going to die? Because you had me when you were 37, and you should have had me when you had Mel because you were only 27. And or 28, and he's like, "And now you're gonna be so old, you're gonna die," because his dad died, so he gets nervous about that, and I'm like, "Tobin, for better for worse, I have visions of myself, and as you guys know, have, like, some psychic abilities and clairvoyant abilities," and I'm like, "I've always had visions of myself as a really old lady, so whether I'm late 90s or 100, I have a feeling I'm gonna be around for a while." But I digress from that point. My point is, that I think as human beings, we are meant to evolve into a place where we are upright. And it is really hard to do this when we are survivors of a system and a world where we have been oppressed. And what I like to talk about is it's not just humans oppressing humans. This part doesn't really matter if you subscribe to this or not, but for me, it's important to state that just as we humans are spirits on a human journey, so too are many other spirits and collectives involved in what is happening on Earth and beyond Earth. And because I, again, have these clairvoyant capacities. Sorry, I left the window open because I'm trying to get better Wi-Fi, and my dog just ran off. But, like, because we as humans have the capacity to feel and think and to connect to this part of us that is our spiritual side. I mean, one could argue that animals, one of the reasons that it works so well for them to be in a place where you could say the mightiest rules or there is this element of brutality is because they are always connected to the spirit plane. And anyone who has pets knows that animals are intrinsically connected to there isn't this cutoff that we have with humans where humans have been in sort of enslaved and entrapped and stuck in a part of our brain that because it's unnatural, because we are meant to flow all the way up and to be able to access our third eye and the spiritual seat of our soul, where we can be a soul, but we can also be a human, and we can have spiritual insight, and we can have logical thinking and the wise brain, which is really like balancing it all out, that can think about things before it acts, that can then from this place root down into the body and access the compassion of the heart, which is also like another brain. And the compassion, and also like when we are not a body under attack, our gut system by an environment under attack, we can also have this other brain in our gut. And they always say like, oh, listen to your gut. Like that's the seat of your intuition. That's the seat of the body's wisdom that knows when something's good for you and when something's not. But all these systems have become hijacked. And because they become hijacked, we can't really get up to this part of ourselves that is supposed to be the person in charge because we are oppressed. And this gets to my point of I think that it's really easy, and it's not to excuse all the systems of oppression that disproportionately, like, I'm a white woman, so I'm a woman, so I've experienced sexism, but I'm not black, or I don't have brown melanated skin. I don't, that's not my ethnicity. So I haven't experienced oppression of that next level down. I have the privilege of having the skin that's considered, the race that is doing all the oppressing. So I have a privilege of not being oppressed also for my skin color. But what I'm saying is that I feel like it's important not to discount and go back to this place of like, oh, I'm going to be colorblind, because like that is not seeing the oppression of, like, if you are a woman of color, you have the sexism and you have the racism, and you have to battle that daily, the microaggressions, the all of the subconscious programming that puts you in a place of being extra oppressed. So I'm not trying to like discount that. What I am saying though is that all humans, even the ones being the oppressors, as I was oppressed by and abused by the type of human that is, at the top of the totem pole. But my point is that even those humans are in a system of oppression, and there's a reason why they're serving a role. Like, for example, when, and the system, the powers that be know this. Like, when the colonies were started for the Americas, like, yes, we have our freedom and we want it, but the whole reason we had the battle of independence was because we wanted to keep slavery. The colonies wanted slavery. The England was like, "No, we're outlawing slavery." And because they were like growing the tobacco and the cotton, and they were like, they wanted free labor. They were like, "Fuck, that's the whole old white men created this nation." And it's not that I'm railing against white men. I'm not. But what I'm trying to say is that all humans are oppressed, and the system puts certain people into power who are also locked in their brain of oppression, where they can't access the part that's supposed to make them a wholesome leader that thinks about the whole. And so, like, for example, what I was saying about the slavery piece was that the plantation owners had the immigrants that had the right color skin, that when as racism was beginning to take hold. I mean, it has for a while, but like as it was really taking hold in this country of the United States, they would put them, it was like it's a system that creates classism and racism. It's a system that creates someone on top and someone below based on these things like color of the skin or your gender or whatever. And the whole system, getting to my other point, because we all know this, I don't need to go off about it, but my point is that it creates a pecking order. It creates a system that keeps people oppressed, and even the oppressor is oppressed. And I think that is the piece that I want to talk about. Hey, Eve, welcome. That even the oppressor is oppressed. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going to go like coddle the person who's committing atrocious genocide or racist, abuse, no, or sexist abuse or whatever. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna pardon you. But my point is that I think the more that we can, yes, let freedom ring, exactly. Um, the more that we can realize that as a species we are oppressed by powers that be, that it behooves to keep us oppressed, and not get scared by that, not go down a rabbit hole of oh no, there are extraterrestrials or beings out there that want to feed off us, because that's a scary thought. But also not turn a blind eye to the fact that there are powers that be beyond us that have an interest both in liberating us, and there are ones that have an interest in keeping humans, just like movies like The Matrix, not that literal, but keeping humans, harvesting off of humans, because we have something very special here. And what we have that's very special about Earth and very special about the human species is that because we're living in this very dense planet where survival is a thing. Most of the cosmos, from what I understand, is is of a dimension where it's not that survival of the physical form perishing. Like it's of a dimension where you sort of live on. You don't have that physical biology of the pain and the death cycle that creates a real terror, because the body's wired to survive. So this hindbrain is there for a reason, and survival is something that's necessary for our species. So it's a really fine line between between not discounting the fact that the body's wired to survive and that it needs all of these aspects of the hindbrain, but the problem becomes when humans are oppressed to the point where we can't access up here to our spiritual center, and then we don't have we have systems built and continued and maintained not just by the humans like I'm talking about, but by powers that be, that the humans that have been in these positions of power, these sort of secret societies, and the type of a type of occult worship that goes on, and the powers that feed off us, it behooves everyone to keep us afraid and to keep us sick, hence like Monsanto. And I mean, I live on this acreage, and there's someone from Boulder County, which is a liberal county, out spraying Agent Orange, which is marketed as Bayer, as Roundup. Oops, every time I do that, balloons happen. But like, basically, you know, Agent Orange is a toxic neurotoxin that creates cancer, and it's still being sold all across the world and sprayed onto our land, and it was happening in my backyard right next to my property line. Why? Because it keeps everything sick, and keeping things sick allow this warped system to continue. And so I think the reason that I feel called to talk about all this is because I myself happen to have the capacity to, like in my last article I wrote, and someone had commented, they're like, "You don't need to go off and talk about all the spiritual stuff. It's deep enough when you talk about your healing and your loss." And it's like, yeah, that has been a big part of my mission, to talk about what it means to heal as a survivor and as someone who lost my husband to cancer. Speaking about neurotoxins and toxins in our environment, I lost my true love to cancer because of how sick this world is. Sick in terms of like all the different layers. And getting back to what I was saying, as humans on this planet, the reason that we're so sacred and so special is that to what this means to be this divine being in this human vessel, with the intensity of the contrast of what earth provides, and the majesty of, the waterfalls and the forests and the wind that rages and the fire that burns and the juicy fruit that you pick off a tree, like, and our sexuality, and being able to, like, the awakened feeling of being an alive being that can experience ecstasy, that has all been co-opted, like, so that it becomes, even sex is very much muddied in this place of domination, of keep it ensnared, of the porn industry, so that you're still having orgasm, but it's linked, it's very much smashed down into the reptilian brain of fucking, basically. And that is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that sort of raw feeling of orgasm, but what I am saying is, when it's been smashed down, so that's all you have, it's not the whole story, and you're cutting yourself off from something way more powerful, way more enlivened, way more divine. And because we've been so oppressed, and we're surrounded by this idea of that's what sex is, or that's, and then most of us, a good majority of us, have been abused as either children or women, and plenty of boys get abused too, by, again, the system that thinks it's okay. It's really hard to free yourself from that. And I feel like it's important to realize that, like, that's all that's happening. Open your eyes wide open, eyes wide shut. Like, we have to open our eyes first. And part of what I feel like my calling is, because, like, you're here, you all have the things that you're giving. Like Eve, who I'm so stoked she's here. She's one of my good friends here on Substack, is, she's clairvoyant and has and brings this gift of her channeling. And then, I know a lot of you are writers, writing from, like Nabanita, I feel like you're writing from this place of, like, healing, and, like, what it means to be on this healing journey. And so, like, we all have these things that we're bringing to the table. And I feel like, I need to like, I'm like, all the people here, I'm like, I should know all of your writing. I know, Jason, when I've asked him, he's like, I'm here to uplift people. He has like simple memes that he puts that are like making someone smile, So like we all have our gifts that we can do to help uplift each other. And part of it's sharing our story and sharing like what makes us I'm so glad you're here too, honey. That makes us unique. And so, like, we're here to bring that forward. And so, I think for me, I've had a unique upbringing that was surrounded by, the year in the ashram, being raised in a spiritual town by a very spiritual family, even though there was also a lot of darkness and a lot of dissociation and abuse. But, like, also being raised to sort of cultivated this ability and these native talents that are coming online of clairvoyance, but also because of the trauma that I've gone through, I feel like I want to talk about what it takes humanity to heal, but also from the spiritual lens of what's happening to all of us as a species, so that we don't just fall into the area of like, oh, those assholes who are like ruining the planet. Yes, I have righteous rage a lot of the time. And I think it's helpful to be like, all of the human species being oppressed, we all have the chance to rise up. And as we do, we get to realize that like the whole point of coming here is like I call it earth school, or it's a like it's a video. If you think of it as a video game, like the souls who come to earth, you have to have so much courage. And so I just want to honor all of you seven, and seven's like a spiritual number too. But I want to, the seven colors of the rainbow and the chakras, but I want to honor the seven of you who are here live with me, and anyone who might be watching this. Like, I I honor you for your courage to be here, and I love you. I love you for your courage, for coming and for sharing and for showing up and for deciding that like you're going to be part of the change wave and that you're going to stick around in this crazy fucked up world that's also so majestically amazingly beautiful. It's pain and love are two sides of the same coin, and coming here and being willing to be boots on the ground and to dig through the mud to find this part of our humanity to anchor back into our hearts and our minds, but the third eye mind that sees beyond the suffering. And it's not like up and out, because then you anchor into the fact that like your vessel, and like being able to listen to like what foods are good for your body versus just overriding it and consuming what we're told to consume. And like what does sexuality feel for you? How do you honor, how do you get back to like into your own body, to feeling like what's sacred, what do you allow, what do you not allow in your sacred divine expression of orgasm and whatever else? Like, how do you become a sovereign being? And that's what it's all about. So anyway, I got to go pick up my daughter from school, but I love you guys, and thanks for joining me. And I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your evening or day, and so much respect and love for all of you. And we'll talk to you soon.